Hello and welcome to a special edition of As the CMMC Churns. I'm Matt Titcombe, the CEO of Peak InfoSec, an authorized CMMC assessment organization. I'm also a CMMC certified professional and assessor. Additionally, I also develop curriculum for the CMMC ecosystem. Today's episode is Acquisition 101 and the CMMC Rule, update number 1. Yep, we're going to talk about all the changes everybody's talking about on LinkedIn with how DoD is implementing the new rule. So this is all going to come down to two choices, proposed or interim. So let's kind of do a quick summary about how all this works. In the background is the Office of Information Regulatory Affairs, OIRA. Best way to think about these guys, they're the bureaucrats for the bureaucracy. When there's regulations that need to be published to the commercial sector and public community, IRS, whatever, they go through them. There's a procedure they've got to follow. And basically that's how regulations get published. It's the meat grinder in the middle of the bureaucracy. Unfortunately, what it comes down to is when new regulations come out, they're either submitted as interim or proposed. So let's start with proposed first. A proposed is the normal, natural, right path. So the rule is proposed, it's published, 30 days later it's made open for public comment, which typically lasts 30 to 60 days. And during that period, the public comments are added. What happens after that period of the comments is then that agency must go back and adjudicate, make any final revisions. And then at that point in time, and OIRA signs off on it, the regulation is published and now goes into effect. The interim final rule, the technical term, is a proposed rule that short circuits that. Basically, it goes through the same first steps. It gets published, comment period for 30 to 60 days, and then it goes into effect. Bang. That was DoD's original plan. So when it came to CMMC, DoD submitted it as interim. However, OIRA currently has it published on their website as a proposed rule. Now, that basically means we got to go through the full gamut. Well, oh crap, it means there's now two timelines in play. Previously, for the original CMMC 1.0 rule as it was submitted, it was accepted as an interim. And there's still a chance that this could flip and become interim. So that's why there's two paths in play right now that we need to walk you all through as a part of this update to Acquisition 101 and CMMC. So for everybody that didn't watch our previous one, let's walk you through Acquisition 101. When it comes down to contracting, again, putting on my old government PM hat, there's 4 primary phases that acquisitions run through. You've got to develop the contract, and in that phase, we're developing the requirements, we're drafting the statement of work, we're determining the contract mechanisms approach and clauses, and all those other things start there. Now, you even have done financing. You're starting to figure out your costing. All of that is occurring in that part. Now, the next step is, contracting officers all have to go out for a request for information unless you're buying pure COTS. And then you're going to go out and find qualified vendors, validate your cost estimates, and get feedback on the statement of work and everything else you've gotten. Now, at this point in time, when you're going RFI, you're also letting them know of all the clauses, the draft. They're going to see kind of where you're really completely going. And that feeds back into your cost estimates and everything else that you're expecting. Now, that in turn leads into the request for proposal. Yay, great. We got the proposal. We submit our proposal to the government and they award the contract. This is now the milestone event at the RFP stage. Then your final phase, and this is really sometimes a really long part of a contract, is all the things that occur for immediately after that contract award and any option years and then any contract modifications that need to occur throughout the life cycle of that contract. Now, behind this is actually then the acquisition life cycle of money. Finances for the federal government for quarter 1 start on 1 October. So, yep, their fiscal year starts 1 October of every year. And the primary focus of quarter one is to allocate money, basically to spend the money that they're now getting as tax dollars that we've provided them as, and people and businesses in the public. Spend money fast, get it booked so it can't get stolen. We'll talk about getting stolen. Q2, Q3, our next step is to actually get contracts awarded. Our real goal is to avoid going into Q4. Q4 is always kind of crazy time. So big programs, things that are ready, they're trying to execute their contracts that are going to be awarded that year in that 6-month block. They're also starting RFIs. Some of the very large ones with dedicated staff, they're able to do more in Q1. But that's kind of the sweet spot for contract execution is Q2, Q3. Well, in Q4, the primary focus is, again, finishing up awarding. You've got a lot of small contracts are being awarded then because they're buying down next fiscal year with fallout money. Remember we talked about having money stolen? Well, if you're not executing your program fast enough and you're not getting your dollars spent, your money gets pulled and gets given to other people. And now if I can execute your money because I've got contracts ready to go, or I can execute options, I can expand the scope, do all that, hey, I'm looking good as a PM because I'm spending your tax dollars better. Sorry, that's the way the game gets played. And then the fiscal year ends on 30 September. So when we look at this overall, and we look at how CMMC 2.0 is going to go into effect, we see the fiscal years on the bottom with the related quarters. We're right now in fiscal year 23. Likewise, you see all of the phases just as a reference line for you up there as to what the phases of the contracts are. Now, remember, as we start talking the CMMC rule, all the DFARS clauses are still in effect. There's no changes to any of them. CMMC fundamentally is a certification of your implementation of 800-171 as required by those clauses. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. So now let's start to lay in. So right now, we're today. We're in Q2 right now, fiscal year 23. And this proposed rule is actually now, based on what's on the public website, supposed to be released in May of 2023. So we're in Q3. Well, unfortunately, this starts to impact our timelines for what's going to happen next within all the contracts. So let's lay in contracts. So major program of records, typically they've got sustainment contracts. You think of the fighter planes, they've got new build, new delivery, new capability. We'll talk about those, but I need to sustain the existing F-15, the F-22, the F-35. That's going to go underneath here. Parts, pieces, everything else goes under sustainment contracts. Likewise, base level has tons of sustainment contracts. Mowing lawn, to people, to specific engineering requirements they need done at a base level that's not a program of record. They all typically occur during this general time frame. Now, likewise, the program of record. Now, when we're talking about procurement or research and development, these are long planned out contracts. Typically, you're starting your planning cycle in the fiscal year prior to even when you're executing your RFIs. You're starting that, you're working with the contract officer, you've laid out your acquisition strategy along with your senior executive representative. And in that case, you're laying this battle rhythm out years in advance. Once you kind of get into this, you can now see, as we're laying in now, for procurements of record, we don't see CMMC happening in here. Likewise, this is where things really happen is programs of record are always working the future year's contract. We're starting to draft, we're starting to build requirements, laying all that out for the next acquisition chunk. Now what happens is now, all of a sudden is, when we're looking at in the proposed path, again, we've got to go the full gamut of the regulatory bureaucracies of after comments are submitted, they got to be adjudicated and finalized before the rule goes into effect. Plan basically a year. What does that do? It takes what we think of right now, CMMC was supposed to go into effect this summer. It moves it out to fiscal year 24. Now that dash line, there's a lot of comments that are going to be non-applicable. They get thrown away. There are comments that have already been adjudicated during the other ones. So again, they can reuse, but there's going to be wiggle room in there. I can't tell you specifically when that's going to complete. We'll get a better idea if this remains proposed and kind of as DoD provides updates via OIRA. Now, what does that really mean? Well, when you look at that timeline, the only real first thing you're going to see is those large programs of record are going to be able to do RFIs for CMMC. So they're looking at fiscal year 25 contracts. Now, when we're looking at the fiscal year 24 side right there, you're already in for large programs of record. This isn't a requirement I was able to put out as a part of the RFI. I'm not going to add it. So that contract, unless I've got specific approval and things are really exceptions, you won't see it for that procurement contract. Base levels, depend upon how that wiggle goes, you may see it in base level contracts because they may be able to say, we know the rule's coming, this is what the draft says, we're going to add it in, and we're going to want you to account for it because they tend to work faster windows. Is it possible to see CMMC in that time frame? Yes. Likely, no. Part of the other issue is DoD is going to be approving contracts to have CMMC clauses during this ramp-up period. So in net effect, if this remains proposed, CMMC will really go into effect in fiscal year 25. Now, because of this delay, fundamentally, DoD is going to be expecting you to have implemented 800-171 and be ready to get certified ASAP in that fiscal year 24 when that window hits. So when it really hits in fiscal year 25, there may not be a ramp up. So you need to keep that in the back of your mind of a worst case scenario in this delay. Now, if we talk about how things go in the interim path, again, we kind of see the interim rule now goes into effect this fiscal year. Potentially, it will go into effect that 60 days after the comment, which would now push it into Q4, either at the very start or middle of Q4. Again, nothing is going to happen on any contracts occurring in Q4. You may now start to see it again with those large programs of record. Again, it may be a little bit too late for the RFI phases to go and get them in that fiscal year 24 for programs of record. It's going to depend upon a little bit of variables and how aggressive a program officer and the contracting person is. Again, you'll see them still for program of records for their next future year contract. Definitely, you can expect them then. So what does it really do? Well, because the program of record sustainment contracts and base level contracts are fully in play, you can expect CMMC clauses to go into effect in fiscal year 24. Now, that being said, this will bring in a ramp-up period. Why? We, the C3POs and certified assessors, are the bottleneck. There's not enough of us yet. So DoD is working with the AB and we'll be ramping this up as our capacity increases and as more and more of you all get certified. So what does this really mean? Well, first, we need to recommend your 3 steps you need to go through. Step 1, implement 800-171 now. You're required to do it. Don't push this off. It's going to cost you more money and it's not going to be cost effective. Step 2, report it in SPRS. Again, you're required to do that. Then step 3, when all this finalizes, you can go ahead and get CMMC certified. That's the process you need to follow. And if you do this backwards, bad things happen. So 1, 2, 3. Now, let's sum up. Bottom line, all the DFARS clauses for your requirements to implement 800-171 are fully in scope today, and you are required to comply and implement NIST 800-171 today. If you've got those clauses in your contract, get on it. Stop dawdling. Now, the CMMC rule, if it stays proposed, expect full implementation in fiscal year 25. If it does remain and manage to get flipped to being interim, fiscal year 24 is when it will happen. Now, all this does is it may give you more time that you need to get the third-party certification. Not more time to implement 800-171, just to get your third-party certification. Take the time you've got, implement 800-171 now, and save yourself money by doing it now when you've got potentially more breathing room. Now, again, 800-171 is hard. Typically, for organizations, it takes 12 to 18 months to implement 800-171 before you're even ready for an audit. So keep that in mind for where you're at. And then just follow those 3 steps we just covered. And frankly, ignore all the CMMC hype and craziness going on around, what is DoD going to do? Market pressures from primes are going to force your business into compliance anyway with supplier performance risk system scoring. You're going to have to get this done, or you're going to have a chance to play with Department of Justice. Again, not recommended. So bottom line, again, if you haven't heard me pound this home yet, let's make sure you get it one last time. Implement 800-171 ASAP. This is the long pole in your tent to get everything done. Please do not use the delay for your third-party certification as a reason to avoid implementing 800-171. You are doing yourself a significant disservice and significantly increasing your business risk. It's not worth it. Take the time, get started now, and you're going to find you're better off. So I'm Matt Titcombe, and this was As the CMMC Churns. Next week, we'll return to our normal scheduled agenda unless DoD does something special yet again. Again, thank you for joining us for As the CMMC Churns.